Hello and welcome to Lost River Legends. This is episode 1, and we have a very exciting guest to start everything out. His name is Pete Travers, and he has been a Hollywood visual effects supervisor for over 20 years. He's been a producer and has contributed to some really exciting household name movies. He's also been a big part of the BFRO, helping Matt Moneymaker get his site off the ground, and is now a partner with his Bigfoot Reality project that he is working on. This will actually bring things into the 21st century with a smartphone app. So without any further ado, here is Pete Travers. Thank you. Welcome to the show. We really appreciate you coming on tonight.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
We'd like to have our listeners learn a little bit about your background, what kind of growing up and where that led you, and how you ended up in the movie industry.
Okay, well, I grew up in New England, specifically Massachusetts, in Plymouth, Massachusetts, where the Pilgrims landed. I just grew up a normal town, and ended up, because I guess I was good at math and I was able to draw. It's kind of a choice of what I was going to do, and this was around late 80s, early 90s. I just decided to go to college at an engineering school, which kind of used, I guess you could say, both sides of the brain. I don't really believe in the sides of the brain thing, but and so I kind of fell into mechanical engineering, and I went to school at Worcester Polytech in Worcester, Mass. Got my degree, and there wasn't really the kind of the engineering job market kind of fell out by the time I got through college. And at the time, there was actually Jurassic Park came out, so that would be around 1993. And I looked at that, and I just kind of read as much as I could about what was happening with how they were creating these dinosaurs in the computer. And, it was just a moment where, I had the good fortune of being in the kind of the right place, the right time. And I had an opportunity to go pursue, because I could tell as soon as I saw it, I was like, I want to do that. It felt like it was an artistic thing, but it also felt like it was very much a technology thing. And so I ended up driving across the country and settling for an internship at a company called Wavefront, and which is a software development company that helped through the path of buyouts and whatnot. Wavefront was bought out by a company called Silicon Graphics. Silicon Graphics bought them, bought Alias. They merged together, and then they made the software called Maya, which, over the course of years, by the time Maya was fully released and developed, I had already left the software development company and gotten into Hollywood doing visual effects. My first movie that I worked on was Crimson Tide. And then over the course of years and, moving around from company to company, I ended up working at Sony Pictures for about 20 years. I recently left, but while I was there, up until that point, I worked on a bunch of movies. I've done Lord of the Rings, I did Harry Potter, I did Matrix, done Watchmen, Guardians of the Galaxy, Captain America. So I just had a good opportunity just to work on a bunch of these films, and the way our industry works, like anything, you think that they're massive industries, but when you're actually on the inside, you realize that the industry is not that big, and nor is Hollywood. And so all during that time, as I was doing visual effects, and even, as I was very young, I was one of those people that I found out that turns out were very common out there is that I had an immediate fascination when I was really young with Bigfoot. And, I grew up with watching it on the $6 Million Man. I saw Legend of Boggy Creek when I was young. The big movie that I saw was Sasquatch, The Legend of Bigfoot, the docudrama. And I had that thing that I think a lot of people have, which is not just a fascination with Bigfoot, but this kind of weird, kind of a primordial fear of it. But there was definitely an attraction there. It's like, why is this so scary? And then, so kind of halfway through my career, I guess, I ended up, it was really at the advent of the internet, I ended up finding Matt Moneymaker's site, the BFRO.net. And so just while in the middle of doing, I think at the time I was doing Star Trek television stuff. I think it was Star Trek Voyager. And this was in the kind of the mid-'90s. I reached out to Matt. He responded, and he kind of pinged me, like, what can you do? How can you help? And I ended up really, at least in the beginning, just helping Matt with his website, just doing graphics and things like that. And again, this was really at the kind of the advent of the internet, and we were just, back in the day, an animated GIF, just amazing. So I ended up just helping Matt just kind of beef up the website, making it look prettier. I ended up designing the BFRO's logo, and I've been friends with Matt for 20 years now at least. And so with that, and so while I was helping Matt do the graphic stuff, I just was kind of, because I'm, busy during the day, I was like, well, how could I help? And so I came up with the idea of the Bigfoot Sketch project, which, for me, looking at all of the existing artwork out there and the existing photography, there was a wide range of looks to Bigfoot. And, the kind of, I guess you could say, the kind of the engineering in me, the kind of the scientific method kind of came out of me and said, okay, if there's a way to do this, if there's a way to see if we can kind of hone in or narrow down the look of these creatures, how would we go about doing that? And I came up with the idea of doing it like detectives does a police sketch, where, we've got all the eyewitnesses, and in theory, if I am able to interview the artist or interview the eyewitness and get as much detail as I can, produce a sketch, and then probably the most important part about the Bigfoot Sketch project is the iterative process. For me, don't tell any of the eyewitnesses this, just kidding. But getting notes back, if I do an initial sketch and then they basically say, yeah, that's it, that's exactly what I saw, I don't think that's anywhere near as compelling or interesting. I really encourage the eyewitnesses to tell me what's not right about the sketch. And I know that what inevitably comes up is they're worried that I'm just going to have to be doing a bunch of these sketches and wasting my time. But I'm constantly trying to remind them. I'm like, look, this is just the only way that we can do this. We need to extract from you truly what you saw as much as we possibly can. And so the theory of all of this is, if Bigfoot exists, and the species, if there's a kind of, let's say there's a singular species across North America, and they all look very similar, if I get enough credible eyewitnesses, then my sketches should look similar. And so that was the process. And I knew that not all of the witnesses that I was going to get were going to necessarily be credible, not in the way that, at best, the whole project it's circumstantial evidence, maybe even one more derivative off of that. But, I find that, for me, visually just fascinating to see if there's a way that we can get closer to what the actual Bigfoots look like, in particular their faces. So as I started this process, and I believe I started in probably around 1995, 1996, and I've done close to 50 or 60 eyewitness accounts, and they're all on the website now, which has been now ported to a new website. It used to be on the Painted Cave, linked to the BFRO, but now it has switched over to a new website called Bigfoot Reality. So anybody out there that is looking for it, that's where it is. And of course, it's linked on the homepage to the BFRO.net. So
awesome.
If you want to find it, it's not too hard to find it.
Yeah, and that's actually how we found you, is kind of the link outs that you had from the BFRO over to your sketch, SAS Sketch. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that actually
Sketch. That's just it's a goofy word, but it's the Bigfoot Sketch project.
It's clever. It's really clever. And what's cool about it that really drew me in were the different faces. I think you have some different body types in there as well, and then you have some composites of heads and bodies. So it's fascinating in that there is quite a gambit of different characteristics that you've captured, but it's also interesting that there are a lot of different encounters that match up to that probably you haven't heard yet. So that's fascinating to me.
I'm hoping that I can get people interested in it. I would love to basically reinvigorate the Bigfoot Sketch project. So any listeners out there that they either had a close up enough eyewitness account that they've seen the body, or in particular the face of the Bigfoot, and are willing to come forward and work with me. It's free, and this is all meant to be shared with everybody. And so, getting to your point about the variety, and of course, this is what inevitably happens, is when I'm interviewing people, you can, in a way, kind of easily tell how credible people are. And one of the things that I don't think can be dismissed is that some of the most credible people, when I look at the sketches that are associated with those people, some of them look very different from each other. In particular, probably the biggest variable, I'd say, with Bigfoot is the hair length. There's a eyewitness account of a person, I'll maybe just withhold the name, but it was in Washington State, I believe, where this man was out hunting, and he got to a location that out in the woods that was, and he got into the details of he just saw this Bigfoot in the middle of a patch of skunk cabbage, which I'm not quite even sure what that is, but he told the story of how the thing kind of saw him, he saw it, it kind of puffed out its chest, basically to say, "Don't mess with me," and ran off really fast. And so this man went home, told his son, and his son said, "Yeah, whatever, Dad." Which is an important part about all this, is that you still have a lot of believers out there in Bigfoot, and you also have a lot of non-believers, and this is kind of how Bigfoot fits into our society. So this man was kind of feeling discouraged, like his son didn't believe him, and so I can't remember the exact time frame, but let's say it was about a year later. He was out hunting and he had his son out with him, and they were deeper into the woods, and they just got to a clearing, kind of a matted dirt clearing, and it was absolutely crisscrossed with Bigfoot tracks. And he talks about how his son, who was a non-believer at first, suddenly got really scared. And it was like a moment, as this eyewitness was telling me on the phone, it's basically saying, yeah, you believe me now. And, for a lot of people out there, it's vindication. I don't know if I can really, with the sketch project, I can really provide any vindication. But I do think that there are certain eyewitnesses that achieve a certain level of joy that they've actually got an image that they can associate with what they saw, because most of these Bigfoot encounters are seconds at best, a couple seconds, and it may always seem longer, but if you time it, it could be like a 5-second, view of one of these, and then it's gone.
So Pete, this is Brett. How are you?
Good.
Good. Hey, I had to stop you. I had a thought that I wanted to ask you. So when you said you've done about 40 or 50 sketches, is that right?
Yeah.
So as you've gone through this process, you're really kind of living through proxy, through these people that have witnessed a Bigfoot, seen a Bigfoot.
Right.
How has that changed your perspective on this creature? You talk about you've seen Boggy Creek and all these different shows when you were younger, and you kind of had a certain understanding of Bigfoot. How has that changed over time as you've understood these encounters through the sketches?
It's a great question, and it's a very simple answer. The conversations that I've had with these eyewitnesses who have really had nothing to gain by doing a sketch session with me, there have been, I don't want to say a few, it's been more than a few. It's been an experience for me that I can't quantify. It's intriguing. How do maybe that's the best word. Because I'm an engineer, I guess, even though I do visual effects movies, which is the land of make-believe, but ultimately with this engineering process, I think that you really kind of have to run it with a true scientific method. And I'm looking at this even from almost like a criminal investigation with the police sketches, which is kind of along the same theme, is that if somebody's going to sit there and be on the phone with me for an hour and tell me this story, and oftentimes when I get some of these eyewitnesses, they're telling me a story like they're describing a grocery list. It is so matter of fact. Everything about their story is so genuine. A lot of them even ask me, like, what did they see? I'm like, well, I don't know. I've personally never seen Bigfoot, so, but I just, as I'm gauging basically the eyewitness, you can't help but do that. We do that in any kind of conversation. It's like, why is this person wasting their time and my time? Unless they really are curious and they really saw something. And that has definitely changed my perspective on this, especially with the kind of the flavor of anonymity to this whole thing, meaning I have kind of kept it very relatively quiet as far as these eyewitnesses. Some people don't care. Some people want their experiences to be shared. But generally speaking, most of these people are, it's a brief, amazing moment in their life, and that's in a way it's personal, and they're inviting me, and I very much appreciate that, because I don't know where to put that. If I'm gonna sit in the Bigfoot is not real camp, I don't know how to acknowledge these people, other than there may be some people out there that really love to waste other people's time.
Right.
And I know there's people out there that are like that, but it doesn't add up. And I can tell you that it's the genuine nature of most of these eyewitnesses.
And I was just going to say that these people, there's not very many people that have seen Bigfoot that actually sit down with someone that can sketch this out. They might have some artistic skills themselves or someone close to them, and they might throw something together, but there probably isn't that many witnesses that come forward that actually want to capture this creature on paper. And the fact that you're willing to take your own personal time for free, and you haven't seen Bigfoot, it gives a lot of credence to what you're doing, what kind of service you're providing to these individuals.
Yeah, I'm by no means am I a martyr. Like I've been saying, it's like I've been fascinated with Bigfoot, and I will let you know, just to kind of give a little insight into the world of visual effects. Doing one of these Bigfoot sketches, let's call it a session with an eyewitness, is very similar to working with a director on a film. Oftentimes, especially in my role, we start with nothing, and we start with one line in a script, in a screenplay. It's the joke with back when I worked on the Star Trek television shows, the one line in the script, the television script, was "the battle ensues," and then we had to derive from that what that meant visually. It's like how many ships are there, or how's the camera working, and all that kind of stuff. And so that's just been the process for doing visual effects for movies for so long. It's like, especially when there isn't anything as far as concept art or anything out there that you can draw on and start with. Oftentimes, and there's a good portion of the time that we have concept art and visual effects, but oftentimes we're starting with a blank piece of paper. I should say maybe a blank computer screen, because we don't use paper anymore. But so there was a discipline there in my day job, in particular, that even though I'm in theory generating the art, or I've got some artists that are generating the art, and that's kind of the way it is now. It takes a village to do a movie nowadays. Oftentimes I'll have close to 500 to 1,000 people working for me, and I'm working for the director on a movie, and it's just so many people that are involved, especially like these Marvel movies, which are just monstrosities. But but the point with all of this is there needs to be a discipline. You need to figure out a way to, like with the director, extract from the director what they want. And oftentimes, most of the directors, there's no way that any of them are really that good at CG, and then they can't express to you what they want in visual form. They can describe it, and so you inevitably have to get into this kind of iterative process of, well, is this something like this, or is it something like that? And there's a film I worked on called The Watchmen. With the director was Zack Snyder, and he actually is an amazing director. He was easily the most organized director I have ever worked with. He did all of his own storyboards, and he had that whole movie mapped out. And it's an extremely underrated movie. I think it just came out a few years before it. It probably should have, but I was in charge of designing Dr. Manhattan. And of course, I'd have to pull in all these different things. Billy Crudup was the actor that was in the film, and we had to kind of figure out a way to build a full digital version of Dr. Manhattan, which there is no live action Dr. Manhattan in the film. Every time you see him, he's fully digital. And how the process of going and designing him, there's a tremendous amount of discipline, and there's an iterative process. We went down paths when we ended up showing Dr. Manhattan to the director, and he was like, I'm not sure about that. And then I'd go back with the team, and we would do multiple iterations, and it's like we'd wedge out different variables of how glowy does he need to be, how blue is he, what do his eyes look like? Does he have hair? And it was definitely, I mean, it was an iterative process, but it takes a lot of really talented people. But I can say that the Bigfoot Sketch project is actually obviously the scale of it is a lot smaller, but it's the same process. It's being in the service of the eyewitness, or in this case, the director. And but it's in theory, it's my hand driving the pen, but my hand is being driven by somebody else.
I think those are all really awesome points. I think about how there's so many parallels there that you drew. I think about how just even, between me and my wife, if we go to the store and see this or that, I can describe something off the shelf exactly. I could almost sketch it out, like it looked just like this and the package looked like this and it was this size, and she'd be like, I couldn't even tell you what color it was, what section of the store. And so you get probably that whole gambit of people. This is a pretty important standout experience to them, but being able to visually describe and pull that out of them, that's got to be a skill.
Yeah. Well, as you move through the process, it's the one thing, and I've learned this in my day job, is that you get a bunch of people in a room and you don't have any artwork, that group of people will talk forever and never will reach a consensus on what they need to reach a consensus on. Imagery does the driving, and I'm not being critical of anybody, but I've been in too many meetings over my career where we're talking about stuff and we're talking about the theoretics, and it's theoretics are kind of a waste of time. I'd much rather dive in and say, okay, react to this image. Okay, what's wrong with it? What's right with it? Okay, let's move to the next image. Let's move to the next image. And it's the fastest way to get to the finish line. I just think that's what the Bigfoot stuff, because there's all these theories out there as to what a Bigfoot is. Is it a primate? Is it an ancestor of us? Are we an ancestor of Bigfoot? What's what kind of hair? What's the density, the physical characteristics of these things? How could they possibly be hiding amongst us this whole time and we don't have a body and all this stuff? So there's been so many people kind of investigating that kind of stuff, and all I'm just trying to do is help with my little part of what they look like. And I can't think of any other way if we don't have any footage yet. I mean, honestly, once we have definitive footage of Bigfoot, then the sketch project is done.
Right.
That would be a great day. I won't be sad. So again, please, anybody out there that if you have a really close sighting to Bigfoot, please get a hold of me. I would be more than happy to sketch something out for you and work with you.
That's a great undertaking and a service that you're doing. So yeah, please take Pete up on that. And it's an open source idea. We're willing to have Pete on here to share that, and then we want you to be able to connect with Pete. So that's a big deal. That is all kind of channeling into this BFRO, Bigfoot Reality. And I'm liking some of the new stuff that I'm seeing up there. I think you've got some new renderings that I haven't seen. So you've been a busy guy. Could you tell us a little bit about the Bigfoot Reality and the direction it's going, and kind of the end goal? I think you've said you've described it as your pie in the sky idea, but I think you've got something that has some teeth to it.
Well, the Bigfoot Reality is it's another one of those kind of blend moments of kind of artistic things I'm interested in, but then also a technology that's out there that maybe these two kind of seemingly different things could be kind of jammed together, much like the genesis of my interest in visual effects back in the day. I thought about it, watching the enthusiasm that people had for Pokemon Go. In my field with visual effects, virtual reality is slowly kind of penetrating the Hollywood industry, and Hollywood's just trying to figure out what to do with it. But I've always found augmented reality to be where the real future is, and I don't know what the world's going to be like 40 years from now, but I'm pretty damn sure that we will have whatever kind of tools and or devices that will enhance our view of what we're seeing in the world. It won't replace. Replacing is virtual. Enhancing is augmented reality. And I think, it was like, okay, well, if I were to design a fun app, a fun application for the phone, it would be basically Pokemon Go, but instead of being out wherever you are outside, instead of seeing a Pokemon character, you'd see Bigfoot. And so the integration and the development of how that all works is, by the way, we're in development on it right now. I've got my partner's longtime friend who is one of the most brilliant programmers I've ever met. He's working on the platform right now. And so the idea is that from an entertainment aspect, you could use your phone, download this app, and then you could, scan the woods, and maybe you could find a Bigfoot. So it's like I said, that's kind of the entertainment side. But then also too, the Bigfoot community, the Bigfoot enthusiasts. I didn't want to make something that would seem like a toy to them. So there's also going to be this kind of functional, usable aspect of it. And one of the good conversations I was having with my programming friend Phil Brock in the day is that what we're talking about doing is taking the Bigfoot Sketch project, completely converting it digital, and then embedding it in the app. Much like, I'll just give an example, much like how people develop the look of their character in Fortnite, this application will let an eyewitness to the use of CG and augmented reality, they'll be able to, if they actually saw Bigfoot, like an investigator or an eyewitness directly, could use the app to build the version of the phosphorus that they saw procedurally. And of course, we would put a lot of work into the designs and the options of what they could put in, changing hair color, changing the size and shape of it. And this is something that, in theory, you'd be able to do this on your phone. So along with this, the Bigfoot Reality could also be another aid or a tool using GPS tracking location, tie it into the BFRO database, so that it could be a functional tool for field investigators. And that's the idea, is that maybe if two apps, not really quite sure, I'd like it to all be consolidated into a one-stop drop for if you want to know what Bigfoot looks like, you download this app and you use this and you can get there. And then, of course, we would centralize all of that information. So if any investigator out there, is like either has an eyewitness, they could show this app on like an iPad or something like that, and they could kind of swipe through a bunch of different looks of a Bigfoot, find the right one. So it's kind of like the Bigfoot Sketch project on steroids, and that's kind of what we're working on right now. So if you go to BigfootReality.com, you'll see different options when you first open up the website, and please jump on the website. There's a kind of a slideshow of different looks for a close-up of a Bigfoot face. And pretty clearly you'll get in there, and what you'll find out is that there's already a lot of diversity to these different rendering looks. And, of course, I'm doing that on purpose so that I can show, again, with the Bigfoot Sketch project, the same kind of thing. that there's a lot of diversity in looks and appearances of what people think Bigfoot looks like, and then how ape-like does it look, how human does it look, what's its hair color, its eye color. And so, like with any of that stuff, it's meant to be provocative. It's meant to encourage people to take a look and see if we can get a reaction out of people that possibly have seen it. And that's what would be, in theory, poured into the app.
Well, this is it's amazing to think of that coming to fruition. I know you're pretty early in the process, but it sounds like you, even since we talked last, that you've made some great strides in defining things and doing some new renderings. You were saying, what's really cool about it is that I like about it is that it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife of apps or ideas, in that it allows, basically someone who's had an experience to say, they're the who, but then you have the what, where, when, and then you're bringing another layer to that of kind of the how. How did this look in context? How, did it look this way?
In theory, if I can talk through it, I mean, you're bringing up a great point. In theory, if we have an investigator, or let's say we have an eyewitness, that eyewitness saw Bigfoot, they saw it at a certain location. Everybody pretty much has a phone with a camera on it nowadays. Well, there could be a thing easily be put into the app where somebody could film the exact location, the position that they were in, record footage of, let's say, the edge of the woods, near their house, if that's where they saw it. And then they could go through the character construction of the Bigfoot, and then we could integrate that Bigfoot into what they saw and record that as a movie, and basically centralize that movie, that the end result, the composite of the Bigfoot that they think they saw in the setting that they saw it in. And of course, we record the GPS and location and whatnot. So it, like you said, it could be a Swiss Army knife, and we could really, we could provide, I think, in my opinion, an incredible amount of enhancement to the investigation process.
So Pete, something that's interesting about the Bigfoot Reality is, on our Facebook page, we actually shared your website with this group, and it was pretty incredible because the images that are on there are very striking. I mean, you got the headshots of all these. You got the Jersey Devil, you got the Rougarou, the Yahoo, you got all these different types, and every single one of them is extremely striking. It really has a visual that I haven't ever seen before in Bigfoot sketches. And it was incredible how many people commented. I think we had 60 or 70 comments derived from this post because people were just completely blown away. And of course some were like, well, the one that I saw was a little bit different. It had a little bit different shaped head. And I'm like, well, yeah, because there's all sorts of and types and sizes and shapes of these Bigfoot. But what you're saying is if these people see this creature, they can just basically swipe through and decide what this thing, the closest resemblance of what they saw, and insert that into a scene. And are those people able to share that, like on social media? Are they able?
And we're in theory aware land, but that, and I know I'm kind of talking through it, and of course it's continuing to evolve every day. But
sure,
but that would be the idea, is that in theory, if somebody saw Bigfoot, they were aware of this app, they'd be able to build their Bigfoot through the app. Shoot the footage, the trees, the woods, wherever they're at, integrate the Bigfoot moving or not moving, picking, animation cycles or whatnot. This is all my day job stuff. And then composite it in and have a kind of, let's say, it's my job to judge how photorealistic, the visual effects are in a movie. And, I'm basically an art critic in my day job. But let's say it's a reasonable facsimile thereof. of integration, and of course they'd be able to share it, and everybody would be able to access what everybody else thinks, and we probably have statistics of how many people thought that the eye colors were red, and after people, the only there's kind of one big catch to all of this, which is, and this is something that I think can be avoided, but it's there is a, and I'll tell you, there is a kind of a collective kind of groupthink out there that Bigfoot looks like the Patterson film, and in particular, I've had some eyewitnesses that want me to draw Bigfoot in the, frame 352, I forget what the number is, with the arms out to the sides,
right,
looking at the Bigfoot from profile. And they're so concerned, people are, some of these eyewitnesses are so concerned with me drawing it in that exact pose. I'm like, well, Bigfoot's not just frozen like that out in the woods, standing there with his arms like that, waiting for somebody to see him. And, so I think what I'm getting at is that the influence, like for me, for the sketch project, the ones that I find incredibly compelling are the ones that are born purely out of somebody else's mind and not influenced by the Patterson film or previous sketches. I've shared the hypothetical sketches for the Bigfoot Sketch project, a long time ago. But in a way, sometimes I will say that sometimes they kind of tarnish the process. Meaning, somebody just says, "Oh yeah, it looks like picture 18," and I'm like, "Well, then I have nowhere to go with that." And how do we really all know that person just liked picture 18, whether it looked like what they saw or if they saw something or not?
Right.
And so I would say there's no way that we're going to achieve purity with this. When we're talking, this is an extremely sloppy science, and I feel uncomfortable even using the word science.
It's true though. I mean, it really is.
It's true, and that's the thing is, like, if all of a sudden, if let's say the end result is that this app looks great, all these eyewitnesses are all jumping on it, and they're all making their Bigfoot, and then the end result is that it's easily available that everybody can see what the highest percentage of Bigfoot traits. You can see a physical CG version of Bigfoot on the app. Well, then there's nowhere to go. And so we'll see. It would be great if we got to that point. But I can just say that there are a few pitfalls in this process. Because like I said, I mean, the primary goal for me is I want to know what Bigfoot looks like. And I think so many other people have that same nagging thing. There's something, and in particular, I believe I have my personal theories on Bigfoot, meaning I believe that there's an innate fear with Bigfoot in all of us, and there's a reason for that. And I do believe that what's this stuff called not epigenetics, it's mirror neurons, which is the equivalent for us instinctual memories. And at some point in time, we were all hanging out in Africa. We had a lot more hair on our bodies, and we were competing with other hairy bipedal hominids. I believe that the innate interest in Bigfoot stems from an old genetic memory that's in all of us of basically our competitors in the continent of Africa. Mm-hmm. That's what I firmly believe. And there is no disputing the evidence of that, of these hairy hominids that were running around Africa or climbing trees and whatnot. So, Gigantopithecus existed. We know it existed in the jungles of Vietnam and Southeast China. And at one point in time, whatever form we were in way back in the day, we were competing in some cases with these ones, and maybe there were bigger, stronger ones. So I actually believe that the boogeyman, the fear of the boogeyman, is what Bigfoot is why there is such a sustained interest in Bigfoot.
There's certainly a common thread with almost every single encounter that people have, and there might be a few encounters where they felt like that the person wasn't threatened, and the Bigfoot might have smiled at them and strode off. There was nothing threatening, but I would say a large part of the encounters that people share, a huge amount of fear is involved with seeing these creatures, and there's a display of dominance and power and territorialism, whatever you want to call it. So what do you think personally, what do you think Bigfoot is? I mean, you've been studying this creature for a long time. You've done the sketching, now you're doing the Bigfoot Reality. So you've had a lot of exposure to this creature. And you said earlier on in the episode that you hadn't seen one individually yourself, but what do you think the Bigfoot is?
I think it's, if it's anything, I mean, I'm still not ruling out the idea that Bigfoot doesn't exist, but and I think it could exist as a genetic memory, and what we're seeing is a lot of people seeing this or misinterpreting what they saw. But if Bigfoot exists, I think it is a hominid that has survived in certain pockets on the planet, that is probably pretty closely related to us. And in some ways, I would think that it's probably either an offshoot of an ancestor. I'm not going to rule out that there's a possibility that Bigfoot could be Bigfoot's ancestor. If you think about it, we lost most of our hair, and then we moved all into these northern climates.
Right.
We've kind of like canceled out or disrupted the evolutionary process. In theory, there should be a lot more hair on us than there is now, considering where we live. That's why we got to buy all this clothes. So, but if humans were to evolve, and you strip all the technology away, and humans decided to live in the colder climates, then hair would start to grow all over us, and maybe we would become stronger. Maybe we became bigger. Humans are growing right now, as we know. It's like in the past 100 years, the average height of a human has grown considerably. So, evolution is still going on, but like I said, we've kind of manipulated or distorted it. But so, there's a possibility that Bigfoot is the next generation human, and it is made for the temperate climate. I don't think that's probably what it is. I think, if anything, it's quite possibly that it's some form of an ape. There's another interesting thing that's happened recently. I don't know exactly the day, but there's a cave in Siberia where they've discovered this whole new kind of offshoot of humans called the Denisovians, and it was in this cave where they found this. I think it's like a kind of pinky, and they managed to extract all this stuff. What they found is that it's not Neanderthal and it's not human. It's Homo sapien. It's a different offshoot. And the end result of this is it's kind of scrambled the whole process of who was when, so to speak. It's like to think that the evolutionary process is like, okay, well, there was this species, and this one evolved into this one, and this one evolved into this one, and it's a nonlinear process. This is what a lot of evolutionary scientists are figuring out right now, is that of course it's really sloppy, and there's a lot of regression. So the Denisovians is basically kind of introduced And one of the things that the scientists have discovered is that the Denisovians, the Neanderthals, and Homo sapiens were all existing around in this area, in Siberia, at the same exact time. So, it kind of jumbles everything. But I think what it does is it gives a more accurate representation of what's happening that's out there. So that's what I think. I think that, and actually, I don't know if you guys have heard, but it's like, we always talk about why there's no Neanderthals on the planet anymore, and they've eventually come to the conclusion that, there are Neanderthals on the planet, that we have the genetic code in us. So some people have more of it than others, depending on how close you were to Europe. And so we didn't kill off the Neanderthal, we bred with them. And that's why we're basically a cocktail of, previous species. So to answer your question, I have no idea. I have no idea, but it could be one of many things.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest things that's out there is, we don't have a physical specimen that the collective public knows about anyway, that we can study and we can really understand exactly what this thing is, because who's to say that every single Bigfoot out there has the same genetic makeup? Depending on what part of the globe.
Multiple species.
Exactly.
And I'll tell you right now that the Bigfoot Sketch project, if we were to take it as law, then if you had to assume, and if I were to reveal exactly the kind of the credibility order of all the eyewitnesses, you would be forced to conclude that there's got to be multiple species.
Right. Yeah, there has to be something going on.
Characteristics that change radically depending on the season, which I would find unlikely.
Right.
I would find it unlikely that a Bigfoot that has 2-3 inch long hair in the summer and then 6-inch hair in the winter.
Exactly.
I just don't think that's likely.
Yeah. And there's probably not very many things in the animal kingdom that can change their body that quickly, depending on the season, the climate, whatnot.
There's like a few things like an ermine or mink, whatever, I think are the same animal, I can't remember, but they can go from a brown hair to white hair because of the winter. And there's like a few things that can change their hair color, and of course there's a lot of things like chameleons and cuttlefish that can do massive transformations to their body structure,
right.
But camouflage. But something tells me that if we ever discover a white-haired Bigfoot in northern Canada, and we discover a black-haired Bigfoot in Appalachia, if we had that chance and we actually were able to do genetic studies on it, we'll probably find that they're different species.
I think, just bringing that up, it seems like it's like the more we think we know, the less we know. But there's also, we're kind of in the golden age of being able to share those experiences. There's so many episodes of so many different shows. There's so many books, and it's a safe time for people to come out and share their experiences. And the overlap that we see, it's like a big Venn diagram, and we have a bunch of overlapping areas where these commonalities come together and give us kind of a clear picture. And what your work is doing is helping some of that bubble up. And you have other people doing some other things as far as eyewitness accounts, as far as kind of extracting those and getting descriptions. I think I heard a description the other day, and the guy said, Caesar from Planet of the Apes, on the newer Planet of the Apes, it looked just like that. A little bit, it was a female, but the nose was different. The nose was more human, and that it's a little bit of a schema, but it helps kind of jumpstart. Like I could picture that in my head as he described that.
And I'd be happy, and I'm hoping that someday that person can rifle through go through the Bigfoot Reality app and be able to actually take the nose that they want, take the body and the face that they want, and merge them together.
Yep.
And then they can express that this is exactly what they saw. And then that would be the hope.
So Pete, is there a timeline that we can inform our audience about as to when you're hoping to get this up and running all the way to where people can actually go to the App Store or whatever they're...
I wish. I wish it's well, like art is never finished, it's only abandoned. So
right.
We're gonna try to put together a prototype here as quickly as we possibly can, and then we'll get into alpha and beta, and then I'm hoping that we'll have a functional app in a year, but I do understand that it's just kind of a, no pun intended, this is a monstrous undertaking. So it's hard to tell, but we'll see. We'll see. And hopefully maybe we can start it in little bits and then increase as we go.
Sure.
It may be that just the enhanced version of the Bigfoot Sketch project is phase one, where this just becomes a tool for people to kind of do the equivalent of skinning in video games nowadays, like Fortnite. I think it's called skinning. I don't really play Fortnite, but I know there's a lot of people that do. So that would be the idea, that people could do character construction for a Bigfoot and, get into some really good details. And maybe that's what we start with. So,
yeah, I think what it shows is that, in any process like that you're in the middle of, you can't make guarantees. I mean, for instance, this podcast, we're starting off with Bigfoot stuff, but we might quickly go into some other interesting areas because there's a lot of different areas that interest us. So and it's also it's your pet. It's your proprietary stuff. It's how you spend your time, and you sometimes get some time to do some other projects. We noticed that you've written a novel called No Return, and we'd like you to share about that, if you don't mind.
Well, that I wrote in the 90s, actually 90s and early 2000s, the aughts. And that was actually born out of we were kind of talking about it earlier. It was kind of what it's a fictional novel. It takes place in central Idaho, in the Frank Church River of No Return Wilderness. And so that's where the book gets its title from. And it's this idea of the basic premise is, what would you do if Bigfoot was your alibi? And the world that we live in today, we could talk about Bigfoot, but actually it's a lot more comfortable out there to talk about Bigfoot. 20, 30 years ago, people might have been like, hey, this guy's not playing with a full deck. But, nowadays I think people are getting more and more comfortable about it. But the premise would be, if you are actually into some kind of criminal investigation, or there was a criminal investigation against you, and the reason why you're in that investigation is because you had an encounter, a physical encounter with a Bigfoot, what would you tell the cops? And that's the premise of the book. And that's the trap that the main character in the book gets caught up in. And he struggles with that. And it leads basically to trying to track down this Bigfoot that he had an encounter with. And so one of the things that the discipline with the book, and in my opinion, most of the people that have read it really like it, is that and it's available on the store, and it's also available on Amazon. Is that the main discipline, and this is my day job, dealing with movies, is that the actions of the characters, the main characters in the story, have to be believable. Every step of the way when writing that novel was, what would I do if I was caught up in this situation, or what would I try to do, or what would I be paralyzed in not doing, and all of those factors every step of the way. That to me, by the way, just a little side thing, that's the key to a successful movie. I can tell you that throughout Hollywood, all these movies that we love and all these movies that we don't love, it usually comes down to the believability of the actions of the characters in the story. And so, I don't know. I didn't write War and Peace. I don't think it's the greatest novel of all time, but at least it was with the framework of what would you do if Bigfoot was your alibi. I think we maintain enough discipline here that I think it makes for an interesting story. Like I said, you go through every movie that everybody loves. Everybody loves Jaws. Everybody loves Star Wars, Godfather, and not many great movies come out nowadays. Unfortunately, I wish I did work on some of those films. But there's been so much examination of all of these films, like Jaws, for example. Jaws is one of the most perfect movies out there, even though the visual effects for the shark didn't look that good. The characters were so rock solid that every step of the way, that movie just had credibility from the opening seconds, and it maintained that credibility throughout the entire movie, to the point where you can watch that movie again and again and again, and you feel like you have a kind of a window into this absolutely believable world that you would consider it that it must have happened. And that's kind of the key to storytelling, in my opinion.
That sounds awesome. I look forward to getting my hands on that book, and we will. In our show notes, we'll link people up to everything that Pete's talked about, his personal work, his personal project, and this book as well. We really appreciate you taking the time to meet with us, and this time, I hope we can say we got it in the can. We'll definitely alert you when it's live.
Well, by the way, and I'll say this too, thanks for letting me plug my project, the book, and et cetera. It's, ultimately, I really would not consider this to be by any means, selfless adventures. I mean, this is all stuff that I'd be interested in anyways. And like writing the book and things like that, it's all stuff I'd be doing anyways. So I do appreciate the opportunity to plug my hobbies on your platform.
Absolutely. And we're super glad that you came on. Been a great guest. It's been awesome to hear everything that you've talked about. So just before we sign off, you're still actively doing the Bigfoot Sketch project in conjunction with Bigfoot Reality. So if we do have people that are interested in contacting you for sketches, send them your way.
The submission form. Please do. The submission form is online, or they could just send me an email. My email is available on the Bigfoot Reality website. If you don't want to fill out the submission form, get a hold of me, and we can do anything. We could do a phone interview. I'm looking for people that have seen it and have a distinct idea in their head of what they think it looks like, and please do, because I can tell you that I don't know when this whole thing is supposed to stop. I don't know if it's like once I do 100 sessions, then we're done. I have no idea. I mean, it could go on forever. But I do know right now I don't have enough of them. I need to do more of them. And admittedly, it's been kind of dormant for years. So I'm really trying to reinvigorate the sketch project.
Well, we really appreciate you being able to share that, and we appreciate your time. We've just kind of been geeking out a little bit here, some of those movie mentions, and we appreciate that. And we will let you get on with your night, and thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, the pleasure was all mine. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, we'll be in touch.
Thanks, Pete.
All right.
Okay, bye.
Take care. Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up our show tonight. We're excited that Pete was able to come on, and we hope that we have him on in the future. If you want to find out more about Pete and some of the work that he's doing, you can visit the show notes on Lost River Legends under this episode and find out all the information that you need to reach out to Pete, especially if you've had an encounter. He's willing to do a sketch with you, and he's encouraging everyone that you know that's comfortable with it to reach out to him, and he's willing to do that for you. Also, you don't want to miss our upcoming show. It's going to be episode number 2. We have our special guest on, Bill Sheehan. Bill comes from us from New York. He was recently on Coast to Coast, and he was recently on Sasquatch Chronicles. He has some of the most amazing books out there about Bigfoot encounters. It's Bigfoot Terror in the Woods, Sightings and Encounters, and it's volume 1 through 6. Bill's going to be on with us next week, and he's going to share with us some of his encounters that he has documented in his books. And if you've listened to some of the encounters that he has collected, you don't want to miss these. He's going to share some new encounters and share with us some of the work that he's done. And we're excited for him to come on. And without any further delay, we'd like to end the podcast tonight, and we will see you again.